Everybody. We're back for our 10 o'clock presentation here at the Thursday edition of the Weiner Wellness Week. I'm your host today. All day, you're stuck with me instead of Dr. Tracy Straub. I'm Joe Messino. And today at 10, wow, we have one of our most accomplished speakers, lecturer, teacher, university professor. I'm looking through the CV of Dr. Charles Benz, and it's extremely impressive. Instructor, Penn State University, York University, Florida University, Florida International University. Publications, Preventing Cancer at the Molecular Level, Key Nutrients of the Prevention and Reverse of Chronic Disease. It goes on and on. I don't want to take up any of the time of this amazing PowerPoint that you have for us, Doc. So I'm going to stop with your curriculum vitae because it's impressive. It would take 10 minutes to get through. But instead, I'm going to introduce you and let you get started on your presentation today. Welcome to the Weiner Wellness Center.
Thank you, Joe. It's very great to be here. I'm going to push share screen and hope that everything works the way that it's supposed to.
Perfect.
All right. So I think one of the things I want to let people know is probably everybody has known somebody that's had cancer. And I think that's really unfortunate that we have to report that so many people have had cancer. But it also gives us an opportunity to become involved in how to prevent cancer. And so what I want to start with is a little bit of background on me, just to follow up on what Joe started, and then get right into how to prevent this disease. And I'm really going to say it's a chronic disease like a lot of other diseases, but it's the most difficult one, I think, other than Alzheimer's to deal with. So in this case, I have done a lot of work on it, and I started in 2010 officially, starting my own conference, Breast Cancer, The Untold Story. And then I went on to do an educational program for employers called Reducing Workplace Cancer. And then, I guess, because of the research that I'd done, I won this award, the Vail Visiting Professor Award in 2013 from the Ottawa Regional Cancer Center. And that was published in the National Healthcare Reform magazine a couple months later. And then I did another presentation, as Joe mentioned, Preventing and Treating Cancer at the Molecular Level. And I've also presented at that same conference 4 different times. And then finally, I started to do some more publishing. I published this article on eradicating breast cancer, published by the Total Health magazine in 2018. And then, as part of my ongoing research, I developed this cancer prevention tracking tool so that patients and their families would get an idea of what do you do as you go through this journey with cancer after you've got your initial treatment. What are some of the other adjunctive things that you can do, and how can you track how well you're doing as you go through this whole process? So I guess I spent a lot of time, over a decade, concentrating on cancer. And so I'm going to try to give you the short version of what I've learned and what I can share with you today. The first thing you need to know is that cancer is preventable. This was a study done by the MD Anderson Cancer Center in Texas. And all I would do is add a note there that kind of points to the fact that if 90% of cancer is preventable, why isn't the cancer industry doing more to prevent it? 99% of what they do is based on treatment. And I think we need to spend more time and more resources on actually preventing it. And I hope that there are people listening today and watching today that will be able to maybe play a role in helping to move this forward. Unfortunately, the war on cancer was started in 1970. Got my decades and my centuries mixed up. So President Nixon started this war on cancer. And since then, we've only added about the average of 3 months to the 5-year survival rate for cancers. And that's not a very good track record over the last 50 years. And you can see that most of the cancers are advancing fairly significantly, with malignant melanoma leading the top of the chart with 157% increase, 56% increase, and then liver cancer 104%, and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma 87%, thyroid 71%, testicular 67%, breast cancer postmenopausal 54%, and brain cancer 28%. Now, I didn't include all cancers there. What you should know is that conventional medicine has had its best success rates with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and testicular cancer, where chemotherapy seems to really work as well as it's going to, I think. In all the others, chemotherapy has had very little effect, and radiation has very little effect in rare cases, but on average, it's not very effective. So I'll be talking to you today, not so much about the primary care, but what we call the adjunctive care, supportive care. First of all, let's talk about what causes cancer. There's genetics and nutrition and toxins and radiation, stress, exercise, hormones, viruses. These are the main causes. And we're going to talk in a second here about how those causes are distributed. And you can see that nutrition is number one with 35%, and tobacco is 30%. And there's others there, the viruses are 7%. So what I would like to add to that is that probably toxicity, probably the chemicals that are in your life, one way or the other, in the water or the air, or even in the land and the food that you eat, they're probably involved in about 100% of all cancers. So it really boils down to most cancers being a factor of multiple causes. And here you'll see that there's an exception to this. There are these cancers that we pretty well know the main cause of them is one thing. Alcohol, for instance, is the main cause of liver cancer. Sun exposure is the main cause of skin cancer. Tobacco is the main cause of lung cancer. Asbestos inhalation is the main cause of lung cancer. And nuclear fallout is the main cause of leukemia and thyroid cancer in those areas where nuclear fallout has occurred. So these are by far the exception. A vast majority of all other cancers are caused by a multiplicity of things, that list of which I just sort of went over with you. And so I would say that toxins override this bar chart and really are one of the things that really deteriorates and declines in your DNA happens because of toxins in the body. So this is one of those really embarrassing things to say about the American diet. The National Cancer Institute did a study of 16,338 people. They could not find one person who had a truly healthy diet. In fact, most of the participants were deficient in 11 out of 14 nutritional categories. In my workshops that I do, in my classes, I usually ask people, how many of you think you have a healthy diet? About 90% will put up their hand. And then after I do the workshop, I ask again, how many people think they have a healthy diet? And nobody puts up their hand. Because I think we have a bit of delusion going on about what constitutes a healthy diet. And so if you follow the RDA guidelines on healthy eating, it's the minimum you should be taking, like 3 or 4 or 5 vegetables and fruits a day. That's the minimum. And so I think we need to talk about the optimal daily allowance. And I have a chart here that I'm going to show you in a minute that covers this optimal daily allowance of different nutrients. So here it is, and you can see that the RDA is on one column there, and the ODA is on the next column. And the ODA is the optimal daily allowance, which really tells you what you need in order to avoid chronic disease like cancer. So you'll see in this case that vitamin C, for instance, the RDA is 60. I think they may have bumped this up to 90 now, which is really wonderful. But the ODA is 2,000. All the clinical studies say that when you have levels in your body every day being put in there at 2,000 a day milligrams of vitamin C, you will do more to prevent cancer and other diseases than if you get only 60 or 90 milligrams a day. And the interesting thing about vitamin C is it only lasts in your body about 3 or 4 hours. And so you have to take these in split doses at 500, like every 3 or 4 hours. And then when you get into this a little bit more, you'll probably learn that you need to have this vitamin C with bioflavonoids to make sure that it's digestible and gets into your cells. But you can see that most of these things that were studied in terms of what the levels are in America, you'll see that most of them are very deficient when you compare them to the optimal daily allowance. 85% deficiency of vitamin E, 90% deficiency of C, 85% of the B vitamins, except for vitamin 3, which is D3, which is a 41%. The only one that has any kind of coverage on this is the calcium, which we know because people eat a lot of dairy, and so they're probably better at their calcium levels than any other nutrient on the list. The nutrient that's not there is vitamin D. It wasn't included in this study, so that's why it's not there. But when we look at vitamin D levels, we know that most people in North America are deficient anywhere from 60 to 80%. All depends on where you are in North America. The more northern you are, the more you're going to have this deficiency because it's all about sunshine and sunshine exposure. But I'm just including this list so that you get the idea that the optimal daily allowance is just not in the average American's diet. And so we have to go for these levels in order to make sure we want to prevent disease, including cancer. This is an interesting theory because Bruce Ames is one of the most renowned nutritional biochemists in the world. And he has this theory, which I think is very solid, that your body has kind of a priority setting process where it says, okay, you've eaten this food, it's got vegetables and it's got fruits and it has all these nutrients in it. And when that is used by the body, the primary immediate need is for reproduction and for threatening invaders like viruses and bacteria. And so if you've eaten, say, 2 vegetables and fruits a day, you probably have enough or 3 to handle the immediate needs so that we can continue to reproduce as a species and we can continue to avoid many of these bacteria and viruses. You can tell that a lot of people don't have enough of these vitamins and minerals in their body because of the COVID pandemic and all the people who are getting sick from it. I hate to tell you this, but they don't talk about the immune system when they're talking about the COVID in the national media, because they don't want to mention that if you had high enough levels of vitamin C and vitamin D and a few other nutrients, you would not only you wouldn't get the COVID virus. If you did get it, you'd be able to recover very quickly. And so this is one of the reasons why they went so hard and fast on the vaccinations, because that they knew that was another way to give people some coverage, and they just don't mention the immune system and diet. When you go to radio shows and television shows that feature health, instead of the national media, they're all talking about the immune system. So the second use of these nutrients in your body is for what we call the intermediate needs. And the intermediate needs are for the making of energy, for cell maintenance, for biochemical production in the body, to make hormones and to make neurotransmitters. And this is one of the situations where if you don't have enough energy, then you feel fatigued. If you don't have enough of these fruits and vegetables in your body, then you aren't able to make the neurotransmitters, you aren't able to make the hormones, and you end up with depression and anxiety and lots of other symptomatic diseases that play to this whole problem of you not having enough nutrients in your body. So if you have depression, we say get more magnesium, get omega-3 fatty acids, get more B vitamins. These are the ones that help your brain to stabilize so that you make those neurotransmitters. But the main thing here is virtually nobody, based on that study that was done by the National Cancer Institute, nobody has long-term protection and benefits. And it's here that if you don't have enough, then Dr. Ames tells us that that's where your DNA is protected. That's where your chronic conditions are controlled. And so cancer is one of those. And so virtually nobody in that study had enough vitamins and minerals and nuts and seeds and good protein in their diet to actually be able to prevent cancer. And so it's not surprising that the rate of cancer has gone up the way that I indicated in the earlier slide that it's gone up. And this particular slide kind of gives us an idea of what kinds of foods and what kind of nutrients are needed. 10 categories here. You need antioxidants like vitamin C. You need hormone enhancers like fish oil and soy and melatonin. You need to dissolve tumor membranes with vitamin B3 and digestive enzymes. You need to inhibit new blood cell development because cancer can only grow when there's new blood vessels being produced. Well, vitamin D and beta carotene helps to stop those blood vessels from growing and allowing that cancer to grow forward. If you want to promote cancer death, then seaweed and spices like curcumin are very good, and turmeric, or the aliquot vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower. If you want to get more energy, you have to really protect your mitochondria, which is the energy making part of your cell. So you get things like coenzyme Q10 and B1 and lipoic acid and D-ribose. If you want to repair DNA damage, pomegranate is one of the best things to do that. In fact, it's one of the only things that can actually, as a food, repair chromosomal damage in your body. Glutathione is another thing. For detoxification, you need probiotics and enzymes and calcium D-glucarate. For communication, you need vitamin D and vitamin A. And for aerobic enhancers, like getting more oxygen into your body, you need curcumin and bioflavonoid and niacin. So just to know, you have to have a big variety of foods in order to get these nutrients so that you can have all these 10 protective elements within your diet. Now, if you don't, what's going to happen is your body's going to gradually start to deteriorate. Your cells will go through these 6 stages of cellular deterioration. In the first instance, they're going to get stressed. If they get stressed because of toxicity or poor nutrition, then these cells are going to kind of hyperventilate. They're going to get excited. They're going to want to go faster in order to do their jobs. And so we can measure that by there's a test you can get called thermography. And thermography will actually be able to see about 200 cells as they kind of go through this stress stage. Interestingly enough, if you rely on mammograms to do that testing, mammograms need 4 billion cells in a tumor before you can see it, and it's still only going to be 65% accurate. And it also causes radiation. And so mammograms are really not the preferred way to do this. Thermography is. It actually is covered as an adjunct therapy by the FDA. So I would say if you're going to get tested, use thermography and ultrasound as a way to verify what's going on. If your cells become stressed too long, then they become weakened. Now they're beginning not to be able to do their job. They're exhausted. They don't have the energy that they need. And so they become weaker and weaker, and then more of them start to fall into this category of weakness. If they keep becoming weak and it's not rectified, then they become challenged. And that means enzymes and biochemicals aren't produced as much as they should be. Inflammation and fibrosis increases, and cell replacement process is impeded, and DNA damage starts to increase. And we have a test where we measure whether your DNA in your cells is deteriorating. It's called the 8-OHGD test. We'll see that a little bit later. Then, if you don't go through, if you continue to go through these 3 stages and you get into the next one, it's dysfunction. And now dysfunction says you've got high cholesterol, you've got high blood pressure, you've got a lot of things that aren't going right in your body, and that's where dysfunction's happening. And then if that continues, you go into the mutated stage, which means the DNA now has become so scarred and so mutated that it's starting not to be able to do its job seriously as a cell. And then finally you get to the disease state. We did a study on kidney cancer, and I can tell you that in these patients, they were all on dialysis, and we put them on 180 milligrams of coenzyme Q10, and within 3 months, 50% of them got off of their dialysis. And when I am giving talks to doctors on this, I say, why do you think that was? And they really don't know. And then I give them this chart and I say, what was happening there is a majority of your cells were not stressed or weakened or challenged. In other words, you had 20% that were stressed, 20% that were weakened, 20% that were challenged, and so forth, until you had enough cells in the first three categories that could be recovered and go back to more or less normal. And that's why those 50% were able to get off their dialysis. But if you have too many cells that have already advanced to mutated or diseased, those people, those 50%, could not get off of their dialysis. And so that's just a good example of how this works in terms of finding disease sooner rather than later. And that everything that we're doing for cancer and every other chronic disease is to find all these diseases when they're stressed or weakened or challenged. We don't want them to go into the dysfunctional, mutated, and disease state. Another way that you might measure how your cells are doing with the length of your telomeres. And your telomeres are these little squiggly things that have little things at the end that kind of look like shoestring tags. And every time that you are stressed or have a toxin in your body, or you don't eat an organic food, or you don't eat enough of the right foods, those chromosome strings get a little shorter. And so chemical exposure, kidney disease, liver disease, diabetes, heart disease, sugar intake, trans fat intake, simple carb intake, low zinc and low resveratrol levels, chronic inflammation and stress, DNA methylation problems. These are all things that shorten your telomeres. And so the average age, according to the telomeres length that you're born with, is about 120 years. And yet we have an average age of 80, which means we're only about 2/3 of the way towards our potential. In Japan, the average age is about 90, and they have 400% more people that are living over the age of 100 than we do in North America. And it's all because of what they eat. And that's pure and simple. There was a good book on that called the Okinawa Diet. And they covered how many different foods these people eat, 40, 50 different foods a day, small amounts, and foods from the sea. And so there's definitely reasons why they're able to live longer. And if you go to the blue zones, what they call blue zones around the world, they're all eating healthier diets. So this is just a little explanation of the cell replacement process, because most of the cells in your body go through this replacement process. Some get replaced in a matter of days. Some it takes months. So the softer the cell and the more use the cell is, like in your intestines, it's being used a lot, stomach's being used a lot, but your bones are thicker and more dense. It takes months and months and months to replace even 10% of your bones every year. But other cells are getting replaced on a regular basis. In that process, there's handoffs, and you can see where the splits are in this cell replacement process. It's right there that if you don't have the right nutrients, such as enzymes and hormones and vitamins, that handoff to the next stage of that replacement process will not happen efficiently. And so if you have stress in your life, if you have radiation, or if you have chemotherapy that you're going through, any kind of toxins like that will impede that process. And so this is why we say chemotherapy is so dangerous, because it damages the healthy cells as well as the cancerous cells. And so you have to be really careful that you use what we call an integrative oncologist that knows how to do low dose chemotherapy along with some of the adjunctive therapies that we know are just as good and even better in some cases for certain cancers. So this cell replacement process is really important. You need to know that if you're not eating the right foods, if you're not controlling your stress, if you're not detoxifying to get toxins out of your body, this replacement process will be flawed and you will not be able to replace your cells with healthy cells. So one of the things that people don't understand about genetics and genes is that 80% of all the genetic material in your body is on and off switches. Just picture a room with a lot of on and off switches for your lights in your room. 80% of that surface would all be on and off switches. And of all the molecules that have ever been created by man through medicine and through pharmaceuticals, they've only ever been able to affect one of these on and off switches. But vitamin D, interesting enough, can control hundreds, maybe even thousands of these on and off switches. That's why it's such a major nutrient for the prevention of viruses like the COVID or like cancer, because it controls so many of these genetic influences. Now, what you do want to know is that disease, only about 10 to 15% of chronic illness is caused by genetic factors. The other 85 to 80% is caused by things that you control, like nutrition and like toxins in your body. So just appreciate the fact that genetics is important, but remember, all of those genetic things that are in your body, they're all predispositions. That means they're there, but they don't need to be expressed. If you eat the right diet, even if you have these predispositions, they will not be expressed. And so you have control over your genetic makeup. Um, the beginning point when you're born is your genotype. But as you age, every day, the rest of your life, through all of your experiences, you're creating a phenotype. And it's the phenotype that controls whether you get cancer or not the genotype. So what are some of the examples of these on and off switches? Well, I'm not going to go over them all in detail. Just know that there are histones. There's the BRCA gene. These are interleukin 168. There's the pathway signaling in the system, in the body. There's the MDA MB231 gene. There's the ID1 gene. There's the P3053 gene. There's the HRR enzyme and the TGF beta signaling pathway. So all of these are some of those on and off switches that we're talking about. Interestingly enough, we now have probably identified most of the ways to control them, not just with vitamin D3, but look at this. With histones, we can control them with cruciferous vegetables, with the BRCA gene, with curcumin and resveratrol, and the vitamin D3. Remember, vitamin D3 overrides all of these. With the interleukin 168, curcumin. With the pathway signaling, curcumin. With the MDA MB231 gene, cannabis. And with the ID1 gene, cannabis again. With the P53 gene, chlorophyllin. With the hormone RA enzyme, chlorophyllin. With the TGF beta signal pathway, chlorophyllin. So once you know that these things are all controllable through vitamin D3.
Dr. Benz, could
Yes.
I jump in and ask you a question?
Sure.
Yeah. Are you when I saw you bring up the ID1 gene, the ID1 protein, and related to cannabis, there was a study in 2018 in California, National Institute of Health. Molecular biologists at the California Pacific Medical Center performed tests on human breast cancer cells and showed that CBD could slow down and even halt the progression to metastasis by downregulating the ID1 gene.
Yes.
Were you aware of that?
Yes. Most of the studies that I accessed were from Israel. They've been doing the research on cannabis for about 15 years. We're just getting onto it now. So that's why 2018, that's a current recent study, whereas they were studying this about 10 years, 15 years ago. So that's great.
And yet you don't hear Susan G. Komen talking about that.
No, you don't. And then that's unfortunate. That's why we need to concentrate more on this, Joe. I'm telling you, if we don't spend more time and energy on this, we're going to be in deep trouble because we don't have a sustainable healthcare system. And so I hope that people are getting this as individuals, because we need to spread the word as often as far as we can.
We have a sustainable sick care system.
Yeah, we do.
That's very sustainable.
Yeah.
But Robert Scott Bell says that the most dangerous thing in America is a really good healthcare plan.
Yeah, I know. It gives people too
So
many options, but they're not
yeah,
aware of the fact that these options aren't very good. Unfortunately, I'm
yeah.
not going to cover too much of that today, but hopefully the
Okay.
positive stuff I'm going to cover, people will get encouraged by that.
Prevention. I love it. Go ahead, Doc.
Thank you. One of the other things that these conventional oncologists don't talk about is the cancer stem cells. If you had 10,000 cells, cancer cells, 9,999 of them would be regular cells, but one of them out of that 10,000 would be a stem cell. And the stem cells behave differently than the other cancer cells. They have a slower metabolism, and they're kind of looking at everything that's going on in the body, and they're gradually seeing that, okay, you're doing this chemotherapy, we'll build a defense mechanism to that. And so when they say that you're cancer free, 99 times out of 100, you're not really cancer free. You still have cancer stem cells in your body. And then the stem cells are just waiting for the opportunity for your body to do some of the things it was doing before that it shouldn't have been doing so that it can activate. Now, when it activates, these new cancer cells have this defense mechanism embedded in them from the stem cell that was there at the original cancer. Now, when you try to go use that chemotherapy, it doesn't work anymore. And they're puzzled by this. They go, well, why is this happening? It's happening because stem cells are making it happen and they're protected against that chemotherapy. Then they've got to use a different chemotherapy. So it's just a never ending cycle of mistakes. Now, one of the things that we do know about stem cells is there are ways to kill them and prevent them from activating. Look at all the things on this list that have been proven to protect your body from cancer stem cells. If you've had cancer and you want to make sure that you don't have a reoccurrence, then you want to eat green tea, ginger, curcumin, uh, blueberries, genistin, black pepper, selenium, leafy green vegetables and cruciferous vegetables, quercetin, ashwagandha, thyme, vitamin D3, resveratrol, lipotine, cannabis, and beta carotene. So these things should be in your diet every day. And by the way, it's not a bad idea to have these things in your body, even if you haven't had cancer, because your body is actually producing cancer cells every day, 50 or 60 as a minimum, because the cell replacement process sometimes goes astray. There's an error, and all of a sudden, some of these cancer cells will be produced. Well, your body should be able to handle it. But with these nutrients in your body, you can handle it a lot better. So here are some of the warning tests for cancer. I mentioned the thermography before. It's an excellent tool. It's safe. There's no radiation. Vitamin D3 is, again, one of the best ones that you can do. In this case, when people had high enough levels of vitamin D3, they were able to reduce their risk of breast cancer by 77%. In men, if you have high enough levels, you can reduce your opportunity for prostate cancer by 83%. I'm going to skip over the list. I like galactin-3 because it really looks at a molecule that's able to be tracked in terms of that progression. Remember those 6 stages of cellular deterioration? Well, when you get to like stage 3, the challenge stage, that's where the fibroids and the molecules that are starting to turn uh, into non-functioning cells. Galactin-3 will help you to measure that. It also is a good measure for whether you're getting heart disease. So if you get the galactin-3 test, you'll know whether you're on track for either heart disease or cancer, which is a good thing. And then there are a lot of others that can be done. You see at the end, there's the telomere measurement test that we talked about telomeres before. So all of these tests are tests that we use to try to find whether there's cancer developing in your body through finding it before it's cancer. If you wait until you get the test that the conventional doctors use, you've waited too long and you're probably going to end up with some problems. So these are early detection, and I'm going to give you a panel later that we use that includes some of these and even other things to measure in order to see if your body's moving towards cancer. So these are some of what we call the adjunctive therapies. When the integrative oncologist uses the small dose chemotherapy, he or she will also use vitamin C IVs, glutathione IVs, hydrogen peroxide IVs. These are intravenous therapies. Um, I like the sonophotodynamic therapy because that's chlorophyll. You consume chlorophyll, and within 24 hours, the chlorophyll has left your non-cancer cells, but it stayed in your cancer cells. So between the 24th hour and the 48th hour, you use some light therapy or ultrasound therapy, and then that activates that chlorophyll inside the cancer cell to produce oxygen. And then all of a sudden, the cancer goes, we don't like oxygen, and it starts to kill those cancers. Uh, High dose coenzyme Q10 is also a good therapy. High dose curcumin, uh, high intensity focused ultrasound, molecular hydrogen. You can use it as a gas. You can also put tablets in your water. And in one study, molecular hydrogen was able to resolve 100% of brain cancer cases. I mean, this is really powerful stuff, but you have to have it in high doses, and that's why the H2 gas generators are probably the best way to go. There's enzyme therapy. There's modified citrus pectin that is very good for breast cancer and almost all other cancers. There's the methionine diet, which has actually been proven to work better than just the Mediterranean diet. Um, and also pro-resolving mediators. This is the one that I think is fantastic because these are molecules that are taken out of the fish oil, and they're called resolvins. And we actually have an integrated oncologist in Florida that's actually using injections and intravenous treatments for these resolvins. There are 6 of them. There's like resolvin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But you can also take them in a pill form, pro-resolving mediators, to reduce inflammation, to reduce pain, and to protect your body from heart disease and cancer and other chronic illnesses. Uh, the nanoparticle gold, we've only found that to be effective so far in leukemia, but I'm sure it's going to be proven to be effective in other cancers as well. I mentioned the hypothermia before. It's targeted hypothermia. There is full body hypothermia, but I like the targeted therapy that's done in Europe. We haven't gotten advanced in that regard in the United States as much as we should have, but I think that's going to be a therapy in the future for us to consider. And then there's something called Menendezol. And this was actually a veterinarian's drug that was used, and they found out accidentally that the animals that were being treated for one disease actually had cancer and were being effectively treated for it. So Merck said, okay, let's make a product out of it. So a lot of people are getting the prescription medication, but a lot of people are still using the one that the veterinarians use. I don't recommend it, but it is being done, and some effectiveness with cancer is being experienced with this. We also know that the mind has controls a big part of what goes on in the body. And, you know, cancer is one of the most stressful things a person can ever experience. So if there's any way that a person can get their mind in the right place with meditation and yoga, what happens is we have opiate receptors in our brain. And there are these neuropeptides that are in foods are able to actually fill these receptors up. And so that when they're filled up with endorphins from exercise and music and yoga and meditation and good foods, then the viruses and other nasties in your body can't get in. And so that's what's really cool about the mind-body experience. And so if we look at positive thinking and we look at it in its more holistic, even chemical way, we find out that if you have enough endorphins in your body, you'll fill up these opioid receptors, and then you won't need to do some of the other things that are necessary to handle your cancer or handle your chronic illness, whatever it is. So one of the things that we know that because of the control that the brain has over this with these opiate receptors, we think maybe of all the things that you're doing to treat your cancer, it might be that the brain is the orchestrator or the conductor of the orchestra in order to prevent this cancer. So it's really, really important that you do this meditation and yoga and the music, all of these things that help to bring endorphins into your body, because once they get in the brain, then they're going to help to turn off all these bad signals that can be created. Now, I just wanted to say very quickly some of the resources that are available. This is a great book. This lady did her research on people who had stage 4 cancer, but they were able to get it resolved. And how did they do that? Well, serious diet change. They took personal control. They followed their intuition. They used herbs and supplements. They had positive emotions. They had positive support groups around them. All these things were good. And so there is a formula. And this Radical Remission is the best book that describes the journey and how you should manage it with all the things that are going on in your life. The book that's the best for nutrition and testing and all the things that you need to know about the biochemistry of your body is this one by Jane McClellan. It's How to Starve Cancer. And it really tells you about your cancer phenotype test. Remember, I talked about the phenotype and your blood biopsy. So all the things that are important to know about how to get tested and how to treat various illnesses, various types of cancer, because every cancer does like sugar. But guess what? There are cancers that like fatty acids. There are cancers that like protein. And so you have to use her sort of, her, what we call the pathway, the map that she's created. And this is the McClellan map, which actually shows you exactly which cancers feed on which nutrients. And so it's really important to know that and to be able to have the right diet, not only with less sugar, but with less of these other things sometimes as well. So, preventing cancer, some basic things: eat whole organic foods as much as possible, avoid sugar, exercise 30 to 40 minutes every day. If you do exercise, take extra vitamin C and extra magnesium, because these will be depleted if you exercise very aerobically. Avoid stressful situations and practice meditation. Drink spring water so that you keep your pH at about a 7.5 pH level. Volvic and Fiji are the only waters that have enough minerals in them to treat that pH. Put filters on your water system in your shower and everywhere so you don't get the chlorophyll that comes through. Avoid prescription medications as much as possible and use an alternative, a herbal alternative if you can. Stay out of the sun for the most part. You can get high vitamin D levels by getting into the sun at the highest point of the day and getting about 20 minutes of sun without any sunscreen on it, and then either put your clothing back on, get out of the sun, or do your sunscreen, because after that you can do damage. Avoid tobacco and alcohol as much as possible. Avoid radiation from X-rays and mammograms and cell phones. Avoid chlorinated water and toothpaste and chlorinated pools, because chlorinated pools create chlorine gas, which depletes vitamin zinc, which then depletes or causes cancer. So, thermography, avoid radiation. Vitamin D levels should be high, 60 to 90 nanograms per milliliter. pH within 70. You can do a urine test in the morning and see if 7.0 and 7.4 is where your pH levels are, and that's where it should be. If it's too acidic, then you have a problem. You should eat more vegetables, take more minerals, balance your hormones with plant-based hormones. Eat a whole food diet with vegetables and fruits and nuts and seeds and organic poultry. Maintain a healthy weight, exercise regularly, manage stress and sleep and sun exposure, and make sure you take supplements. It's impossible to get all of the nutrients you need from food alone. These are just some of the things you probably need: zinc, vitamin C, chlorophyllin, curcumin, pomegranate, green tea, and enzymes. And this is the test that I mentioned to you before that we have on our website, which has about 20 different things in it. And we like to think, and we have pretty good evidence to support that if you have satisfactory levels in all of these different biomarkers, you will be able to avoid cancer unless you're doing a lot of other things wrong. But that will show up in the test, I'm pretty sure. And so these things look at your nutrition, your detoxification, your stress levels, your hormone balance. And so this is a good test. It's expensive, but it does give you good evidence as to whether you're able to prevent cancer or not. And this is just a radio show that every Wednesday at 2 o'clock, Healing Trends with Dr. Benz, and lots of good tips there. There's some things on cancer that have already been recorded, and Alzheimer's and heart disease. And so 2 p.m. on Wednesday is when the new shows are posted. There's about 30 or 35 of them in the Radio MD library. And so I encourage you to go there and take a look and maybe become a regular listener. We'd really love that. And here's how you can reach me, benck@gmail.com. My websites are behealthyatwork.com and drcharlesbenz.com. I appreciate your attending today, and I hope you learned something. I hope it wasn't too fast and furious. I don't think we have any time for questions, but I'm going to let Joe decide that.
Well, Doc, that was really something. There was so much information. I'm so glad that you put a PowerPoint up for all this, because, there's no way people are going to have to go back and watch it several times.
Well, they tell me that my workshops are like trying to drink out of a fire hose.
Yeah.
and I get that, but I'd rather do that than leave anything out that was really important. I did leave a lot of things out, but I think the main points were covered.
So real quick, we've just brought in a specialized pro-resolving mediator, and you touched on that. You want to expand just a little bit on that before we leave?
Sure. I mean, I've been using it for years now, and I think it's one of the most powerful nutrients that anybody can take. I have case studies where people have had pain, and within 2 days, the pain was gone. I mean, my wife is one of them. And I have a lot of injury from arthritis and from other things in my body. And when I go to the chiropractor to get treated, he said, "What's your level of pain?" I go, 0. I have no pain level. And so I'm riddled with arthritis from all the injuries and stuff that I've had, athletic and car accidents and stuff, but I don't have any pain, because this not only, it resolves stage 1 and 2 of inflammation. Stage 1, curcumin, you can get it resolved temporarily. But if you want to get that cell to revert back to a totally normal functioning cell, then you need to resolve it in stage 2 of inflammation. And that's where the pro-resolving mediators come in.
Wow. Nice. Yeah, we brought it. And I have a personal testimonial too on some joint issues that I tried everything, wasn't helping, but that helped in days, like you said, in a matter of days.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. Really great stuff. Okay. So thank you so much, Dr. Benz. And is there contact information you want to give out before we leave?
If people want to ask questions, I mean, I knew this was going to happen, so please use the email address there, benck@gmail.com. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. I would actually appreciate it. It lets me know that you listened and that you were interested. And so I'll try to do the best I can to answer any of your questions if you want. And if you have something to add, I mean, I'm always wanting to learn as well. So please add as much as you can. And so benck@gmail.com. And I really appreciate the opportunity, Joe. Thank you so much.
And one more question, Doc. When you mentioned hydrogen peroxide IV, what are your feelings about hydrogen peroxide in a nebulizer, food grade hydrogen peroxide?
Yeah, I think it's okay if it's done under a doctor's control, because there's an opportunity to go too much. I mean, if you're doing it personally and you overdose, there can be problems. I mean, there is a problem with dosage, and so you have to be really careful with hydrogen peroxide. So that's all I would say, is make sure you have somebody that's guiding you, that's going to give you the right dosage and the right time that you're on it, because you can overdose, and then that's not a good thing. So either use the IV, which is controlled, or do the nebulizer under guidance.
Okay.
We have a question. What was the supplement for stage 2 inflammation?
That is the Specialized Pro-Resolving Mediators. It's the SPM from Nutritional Frontiers for stage 2. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Benz. Pleasure. All the best to you. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Joe. Really appreciate it. Say hi to everybody at your operation.
Will do.
All right. Bye now.
All right, folks. We'll be back in about 10 minutes for number 3 today, and that is Jacqueline Shedden Go Health Yourself. I love that title. We'll be back with her in about 10 minutes. So either stay on, come on back, but join